Welcome to NEK VT Rocks. And my guest today is Teresa Gerade, and you're from D.U.M.P. What is D.U.M.P?
D.U.M.P is an all-volunteer organization. The letters stand for Don't Undermine Memphremagog's Purity. We've been in existence since July of 2018. We formed to oppose the expansion of the landfill. There was an application for expansion, 51 acres. So now this landfill that sits atop the south bay of Lake Memphremagog is 128 acres.
Wow.
And I forget how high, but way higher than the Statue of Liberty.
I would really doubt that anybody living in Newport doesn't know about the landfill. But for those who don't live here or who live further out, it's the only landfill in Vermont. Is that true?
Yes, that is true. And it takes most of the waste from the state of Vermont is trucked all the way over. I mean, if you just go to Montpelier on Route 14, you'll pass or be passed by several of these big trash trucks.
Yeah.
And in the first 2 quarters of this year, 20% of the waste that was accepted, not municipal waste, but waste, came from out of state.
So that's things like hazardous waste, building materials.
I don't think it's hazardous waste, or at least it's not waste that's deemed as hazardous by the EPA, but there's certainly some waste that has contaminants in it that comes from out of state. Yes, and construction, sludge from wastewater treatment facilities in Massachusetts and New Hampshire comes here with its contaminants deposited in the landfill.
And while we're using great descriptive words like sludge, and correct me if I'm mistaken here, is what's left over after the liquid part of waste is taken off. So it's the sort of goop, clinical term there, that gets compacted. Is that accurate?
Yeah, it's the solids from a wastewater treatment facility. So it's got sewage, solids in it, among other things.
Some places, including Vermont, have spread that on land at various times as a fertilizer.
Yes,
And
I think they call it organics, bioorganics or something.
That's such slick marketing.
Isn't it,
I
though?
mean, we're all now conditioned to believe that organic means healthy and good, as opposed to it's just that chemical carbon word.
Yeah.
So slick.
I know.
So my understanding again is that we stopped spreading it on the land here because it had so much arsenic in it.
That's my understanding because of what's in the water in Newport has so much arsenic. Right.
And I recently read something about Maine that, and this goes back to the organics, has had to stop using it there because what was an organic farm growing what we know as organic vegetables no longer can because of poison.
Right, had contaminants. I don't know if everyone knows the term PFAS, but there are these forever chemicals like in Teflon and water-resistant, rain-resistant clothing and carpeting, a number of other things, stain-resistant. And that PFAS chemical was found in the soil in Maine and in the vegetables, the organic vegetables that were being grown, and dairy farms.
Right.
And farmers have had to dump their milk because it had that chemical in it, which is
probably kill their cattle.
Very hazardous to the health of humans and animals. And
yuck.
Yeah.
It's actually really scary because as I've looked, and I have looked at some of the PFAS studies, it's even present in breast milk, which says that somehow we humanoids are absorbing this either directly through, say, water or food, or from the air or from the land we walk on.
Yeah.
It's a little nerve-wracking.
Yeah, like fast food wrappers.
Yeah.
Things like that. I mean, a number of things that we come, cosmetics, and they bioaccumulate in our body. So it's not like a It's not like something that, okay, I ate it yesterday and, in a couple of days it will be through my system. That doesn't work that way with these chemicals.
And they've been linked to various cancers too. So we're talking some really scary stuff here. And so D.U.M.P was formed around trying to keep those chemicals out of the lake.
That's correct.
How successful has D.U.M.P been?
I think it's a long, slow battle. I can't.
Isn't it always?
I can't say that there's been a monumental shift. Unfortunately, the state of Vermont doesn't have an alternative at this time to the landfill. It's been sort of the easy way out. We have a private industry. We have the Casella Corporation that owns and runs that landfill. And they've made it easy for the state of Vermont. We'll take care of it. And the state, although they have oversight and regulations, they have been willing to let Casella pretty much take the lead on a lot of decisions around the landfill.
Right. And we're all seeing that very specific logo everywhere right now. I mean, it's on trash cans, it's on T-shirts, it's on sponsorships of various events. Turn on the radio, Vermont Public, and I keep hearing what to me sounds like greenwashing about the wonderful things that can be done. It's, again, one of those really disturbing things. How on earth have we let ourselves get to this place?
I don't know. I mean, like I said, I think it's the easy way out. People haven't done the hard work, and we are a culture of convenience. So you buy something and then you can throw it away, rather than do the hard work of using something that's sustainable, that you can use over and over again. We have plastic everywhere.
Yes, we do.
As opposed to having glass jars that you can take and get refilled and keep using, and you don't have to create all this waste. But as a society, we haven't been ready for that, and we probably won't change until there's just no choice, and by then, sadly, it will be too late.
I actually thought we were at that point.
I know.
But apparently, we need a little more convincing.
Right.
So right now, what is D.U.M.P doing?
Well, our current thrust is to make people more aware that we need to protect Lake Memphremagog. Now, we have this mountain of trash overlooking South Bay, but we want to stop them from doing more damage to the lake and make people aware of actually what contamination is coming from the landfill and making its way into the watershed, Memphremagog watershed.
Yeah. Is the state doing anything to ensure that we are protected? I thought that was supposed to be their job. I mean, I realize that may sound totally naive, but that's in their job description.
I know. They have regulations, but sadly, these regulations are not protecting anyone. And I think that that's true in Vermont, but it's true, across the country. The EPA has really been slow to recognize some of these contaminants and very slow to regulate them, and only now finding, oh my goodness, these things are really bad. We knew they were bad, but now the EPA is starting to say, well, these are really bad.
It's only taken them how many decades?
But we have, so we have to stop them now, and we have to protect Lake Memphremagog. I mean, this is a gorgeous glacial lake. I rode my bike here, and I just rode along the bike path by the lake, and it's a beautiful day, and you look out there, and it looks so pristine, and there's so much life teeming in that lake.
Right.
And kids want to swim in that lake.
I swim in that lake.
Yeah. And
regularly.
The people in Sherbrooke get their drinking water from that lake.
That really is scary. You sort of wonder, does Sherbrooke even know this? Are they listening? And here we are, two countries sharing a border, sharing a lake, and most of the lake is on the Sherbrooke side, the Quebec side. Do they really know? How come they're not screaming at Vermont?
I don't know.
Get your act together, you lot.
I know. And the lake, the flow of the water is north. So
Yeah.
anything we do in Vermont ends up
Mm-hmm.
in Magog and Sherbrooke.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, it's a travesty, really,
It is.
that the state of Vermont, the Green Mountain State,
Yeah.
it's supposed to be real green, has allowed this to happen.
You sort of think, how on earth did that happen? How is it that the only landfill, working landfill in the state is up here in the Northeast Kingdom, other than we're a sacrifice zone already? I mean, here we are with a prison and no resources, a very small population, no access, public transportation, and a whopping great landfill. I guess
Yeah.
they think we won't notice.
Well, there were regional landfills,
Yeah.
and they weren't lined. There's these plastic liners
Mm-hmm.
that are supposedly protecting us from the contamination of a landfill. And so they found that landfills in general were polluting groundwater.
Mm-hmm.
And if you dig into the data, you can see that where there were some of these unlined landfills, groundwater has been contaminated, specifically
Right.
with this PFAS,
Right.
but probably others. And so they said, we can't have these small regional landfills.
Mm-hmm.
And the Casella landfill was right there, ready to expand and take on all the waste from Vermont.
How thoughtful of them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And as a big corporation beholden to their shareholders, I'm sure they're ready to serve.
Yeah.
You know what's really fascinating and sort of ironic is one of the issues in Newport right now is about a splash pad that's going to be built in Gardner Park. And a lot of people have been really excited about that. They've been raising money because it's an expensive undertaking. And there's a lot of energy because it's going to be fun for the kids. But they've sort of been stopped in their tracks because the land there is poisoned. There are a lot of contaminants in it. And the contaminants are there because that was a landfill, an unlined landfill, which of course in the groundwater is also going into the lake and into the Clyde River that's right there, but would have been bubbling up. So the EPA, who came to a city council meeting a few weeks ago, have said, you got to move all that earth, kids, and replace it. But that doesn't get rid of what's underneath.
No,
Again, that's
it
going to come
doesn't.
back up.
I know. And we're just perpetuating and augmenting this problem
Yeah.
with what we're doing now.
Somebody told me the landfill is much taller than the Eiffel Tower, which is a really graphic image. I mean, that's massive.
It is.
And it's endless. And I know if you go up Pleasant Street here and turn towards where the cemetery is and just sit at the top, that gargantuan mountain you can see in front of you is not J Peak. That is Mount Casella.
Yeah, and you can even see it from the Veterans Bridge,
Yes.
the Long Bridge. And it is. It's a sight. It's a sad sight to see
Right.
overlooking South Bay.
It really is.
Yeah.
So I learned that there is another permitting phase that's about to happen, and there's a public hearing on the 14th of November. Is that right?
Yeah.
What's that about?
Well, there is a liquid that is a byproduct of waste.
Mm-hmm.
And by putting in liners, that was to capture that liquid. And it's called leachate. And it's produced when the rain percolates through the waste and picks up all the contaminants along the way.
And when the garbage decomposes.
And the garbage decomposes, right.
Uh-huh.
And so there are, millions, literally millions of gallons per year
Wow.
of this liquid
Uh-huh.
that is produced. And you have to pump it out,
Mhm.
and then you have to do something with it. So what they were doing for 10 years, from 2009 through 2019, they were taking some of that liquid and processing it through the wastewater treatment plant in Newport, which, as we know, has its discharge or its effluent
Right.
basically into the lake, into that end of Clyde River there that goes right
Yeah.
into the lake. And also, they were taking it to Montpelier on the Winooski River.
Right.
The trouble is that the wastewater treatment plants cannot remove these contaminants. So Newport said, actually Newport didn't say, but the Act 250, when they got the expansion for the landfill, said, we hear that, and D.U.M.P was behind this education, we hear that there is contamination in the leachate, so they can't take it into, they can't treat the leachate in the Newport wastewater treatment facility or anywhere in the Memphremagog watershed until such time as there is technology that cleans this contamination.
Okay.
And Montpelier recently said, we don't want to take any more of that leachate because it's got this contamination. So right now, there's a big push on how do we remove that contamination from the leachate. And this permit is for the landfill operator, owner, Casella, to build a facility and to trial various treatment options for treating this leachate.
Okay.
And supposedly what they're going to do is they're going to find something successful, but during all of this, they're still going to be trucking the leachate away to Plattsburgh, New York, Franklin, New Hampshire. That's where they're taking it now that they can't take it to Newport or Montpelier. So roughly 1 million gallons a month or more is being generated. And now they're going to run it through some process. We're calling it a pilot. Now they're calling it a trial. I'm not really sure.
Okay.
But it's going to be an expense for the landfill to do this.
Sure.
And they're going to want that money back. You
Right.
can
So
guarantee
it's going to be an
that.
expense for all of us.
And it's going to be scary.
Yes.
Very scary. Because we know already there are monitoring wells at the landfill that are contaminated. This leachate has a way of finding its route out of its protective liner. And while we can't say, oh yeah, we see there's a leak there and that's what caused that, it's throughout the landfill that we're seeing contamination in these under drains where they collect groundwater. And so, you know, I don't think treating leachate there, collecting all of it there is ever going to be a good idea. We just need to close it and have a better alternative, and that's what we've got to pressure the state to find a solution.
It's actually horrifying as I'm listening to you and thinking, Lord, what on earth are we doing here? How does groundwater get these contaminants if they're not coming from the landfill? Because they're not magically there, are they? I mean, arsenic maybe, because that's something that we seem to grow up here. But the other contaminants, those PFAS chemicals.
I can't imagine where they would be coming from if not from the landfill.
And how do you fix a liner that has a problem? Can you?
How could you? It's got tons of trash on top of it now.
Right.
I mean, so to further this operation by treating the leachate there, and they're still going to truck it away? I mean, it's still collecting in the landfill.
Right.
It's still finding its way out. And what are they going to do? Are they going to bring it back to Newport then and dump it in there, supposedly clean leachate? And regardless of whether it has 1 quadrillion of PFAS or 20 parts per trillion of PFAS, it's still going to bioaccumulate. And who knows what else is going to be in there that is then going to go into Lake Memphremagog.
We don't know what we don't know.
That's for
It's
sure.
actually really scary. And I'm clearly at the senior end of living. But if I was a parent with little kids, I would be really worried about this.
Yeah.
Because those little people are absorbing all these toxins that we foolish adults are producing and using because we think it's convenient to have makeup that we can slide all over our faces. And yet, what are we doing? We're not even talking about those microplastics that there really is a lot of publicity about right now.
Right, but even if, I mean, you and I may know what we're running up against, there's still a huge amount of the population that don't know.
Right.
They're just living their lives. They do what they think they're doing is good, you know?
And very often it is.
Right.
But at the same time.
It's the manufacturers. I mean, as a nation, we have to just ban all of this stuff. And as a state, we have to do more.
Right. I mean, it's interesting that the assumption is this is, and I hate to bring this back to economics, but the assumption is that the funding of this is going to come from we the people. We the end users, because that's how the landfill will get paid. Because they're a corporation, they're going to pay their shareholders and themselves. But we're not the ones making the chemicals.
Excuse me, we're not. It's going to cost more to get rid of our trash because they've had to make whatever investment they make.
Right.
And I don't know, are they actually getting some funding? Who knows? I mean, that would be a good question.
Yeah, I mean, where would that come from? That funding, presumably from us, in some other form. I mean, I know that in the Bennington area, there's been a big issue with PFAS, and it poisoned a lot of wells there. And eventually there was a lawsuit, and I know the company had to pay a lot of money. But that doesn't change the damage that's been done.
No, because people in that area did get cancer and die.
Yes.
More in a ratio higher than other parts of the state.
Right.
So it was what they call a cancer cluster.
Yeah.
Because more people were affected.
And we know that firefighters, because of their contact with that firefighting foam, have a lot of cancer clusters again. And it's because of the PFAS chemicals in that foam. And yet that foam, when it's used and then scooped up, goes to the landfill.
Right. Everything goes to
everything goes to the landfill.
We've got coal ash, we've got asbestos, we've got all kinds of stuff in the landfill.
Yeah, it's a little strange when you think, asbestos, big deal. I mean, that's, in the great scheme of things, that seems to be the least toxic. At least you know how to contain that. But the rest of this is so sort of free-flowing.
And like you said, we don't know what we don't know.
That's right. And what are the interactions with the pharmaceutical products that we're all using?
Exactly.
And that we know we're discharging from our own bodies.
Right.
That they don't get taken out at the wastewater treatment facilities.
Exactly.
Because that's mostly a bleaching, a Cloroxing process. Some filtering, obviously.
Right.
But this is pretty scary.
Right. I would think that all the wastewater treatment facilities would need to upgrade massively to remove whatever they can,
And what does even upgrading mean? I mean, how can a wastewater treatment facility even begin to filter for chemicals they don't know exist?
It's true. It's true.
How do we test for chemicals that we don't know exist?
Yeah, it's a good question. Because the EPA has set some of their health advisories for this family of forever chemicals called PFAS at levels that I don't know there are tests to detect. So we're really in a bad way, and we have to stop making it worse.
Right.
But we're continuing to make it worse, and that's the part that's frustrating to me. We already know some things. There are a lot of things we don't know, but we know some things, and yet we're still not taking action.
Is the state, and by that I'm obviously meaning the Agency of Natural Resources, do they have any forward thinking, any planning process to do something different? Because it's the if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got syndrome. What are we doing here? What are they doing here?
Well, you know, when they approve a process that is proposed by the landfill, they will say it has met all the regulations for the state of Vermont. Well, the regulations are not keeping us safe. And the regulations, some of them, if you read the documentation, some of those regulations date back to before the year 2000.
Oh,
Before the year 2000.
right.
And so regulation is not helping. There's
Right.
regulation, there's reality, and reality is that we're poisoning. We're poisoning the water, and water is not an unlimited resource.
It's our scarcest resource.
And, I mean, look what's happening to water in the world.
yes, it's horrifying.
And Vermont, who's this green state, the drinking water in Vermont is rated 45th out of 50.
And yet we're a green state.
We're a
Yay!
green state.
And we have lots of water in comparison with many other states.
Right, but the quality of our water,
It's terrible.
45th out of 50. That is deplorable.
That is deplorable.
But we're continuing to, we don't change our regulations.
Right.
We just say we're doing what the EPA says.
So in the last couple of minutes of this show, and what can people do? Because people are going to listen to this and they're going to say, oh my God, it's overwhelming. What do I do?
Well, I think that the more people realize and understand how the things they do affect the water, like, for instance, if water runs off your lawn and you fertilize your lawn with bad chemicals, those chemicals end up going
In the
into the lake.
In the
You know,
lake. Yeah.
if you buy clothing that is water repellent, you can find out. I don't have the site off the top of my head, but you can find brands that do not contain
Right.
these chemicals. It's work. It is work, and it does take time.
But there are lists.
There are lists, and you can avoid some of those products.
Right.
But you can also find out what the state of Vermont is doing and pressure your legislator. Write letters to the editor. Find out what is happening in the state and do
Right.
what you can to make other people aware of it. And I guess that's what D.U.M.P
And I
is trying
presume
to
we
do.
can say to places like the city of Newport, don't take leachate.
Ever.
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 Ever, ever.
Right.
And we talk in this city, there's just been a new municipal plan, which has some wonderful things in it. But its focus is look to the lake. Cool. I love to look to the lake. I spend a lot of time looking to the lake, looking at the lake, and being on the lake, and being in the lake. But I would like to be able to do that safely, and I would bet everybody else would too.
Absolutely. I mean, this is a great recreational community.
Yeah.
People like to fish, and then they want to eat the fish,
I'd be terrified to eat the fish.
you know, and they want to swim. They want to sail. They want to boat. I mean, it's beautiful. It's gorgeous. Absolutely. I mean, and the lake, if you think about the economy of Newport
Right.
and where we get most of our money is from tourism.
Yes, it is.
So it's like we're biting the hand that feeds us, you
And
know?
with four-season recreation.
Exactly. So the lake should be our first priority.
Right. So, protect Lake Memphremagog, isn't that the saying?
That's the saying. Protect Lake Memphremagog.
We are out of time. Thank you so much for coming in, and I'd like to do this again.
Okay.
With a few more bells and whistles and another rousing chorus of Protect Lake Memphremagog.
Okay, and let's get people to the public hearing on November 14th.
That's the 14th. It's in Coventry.
Yes.
It's at 6 o'clock.
And if you go to nolakedump.com, we'll have all the information that you need to.
The website will be at the end of this interview, so people will see that.
Oh, great.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam.
Mr. Thompson calls the waiter, orders steak and baked potato. He leaves the bone and gristle and he never eats the skin. And the busboy comes and takes it, with a cough contaminates it, and puts it in a can with coffee grounds and sardine tins. And the truck comes by on Friday and carts it all away. 1,000 trucks just like it are converging on South Bay. Oh, garbage. Oh, we're filling up the bay with garbage. What will we do when there's no place left to put all the garbage? Mr. Thompson fills his garbage can, gives it to the garbage man, who takes it to the landfill to its ever-growing grave. And they're hoping to expand it to collect even more. Other towns from miles away won't have to breathe it anymore. And the pollution keeps on growing, slowly creeping to the shore. Sneaks across the border for our neighbors to the north. Oh, garbage, garbage, garbage. We're filling up the skies with garbage. What will we do when there's nothing left to breathe but garbage? The man-made mountain in the landfill decomposes and rots and turns into toxic soup that seeps into the sod. And they show up with their tanker trucks, suck it through a hose, and treat it at the sewer plant, and it needs to be disposed. And the idea that they came up with to make it go away, send it down our rivers, let it drain into the lakes. Oh, garbage. We're filling up our lakes with garbage. What will we do when there's no fish left to eat, and nothing left to drink, and there's nothing left to breathe, and there's nothing left to touch, and there's nothing left to sail upon, nothing left to ponder on, nothing left to see, and nothing left to be but garbage. In Mr. Thompson's factory, they're making plastic Christmas trees, complete with silver tinsel and a geodesic stand. Plastics mixed in giant vats from some conglomeration that's been piped from deep within the earth or strip mined from the land. And if you ask them questions, they say, why don't you see? It's absolutely needed for the economy. Oh, garbage, garbage, garbage. Their stocks and their bonds, all garbage. What will they do when their system goes to smash? There's no value to their cash, there's no money to be made, but there's a world to be repaid. And their kids will read in history books about financiers and other crooks, and feudalism and slavery, and nukes and all their knavery. The history's dustbin, they're consigned along with many other kinds.